The final one is titled Baby Any Day Now, and my husband drops a bomb. I am so stunned by my husband. I'm over 38 weeks pregnant, so I can go into labor any day. Earlier in the week, my mother-in-law had offered to come help by spending time with our toddler so we can be alone with the newborn. Also, it was the first time she even asked how my pregnancy is going and will just leave her mess for me to clean up so she can play with my toddler. So I politely declined. She is the mother-in-law constantly trying to take on the mother role and disrespecting my or our boundaries. Like, I swear every time we see her, I have to tell her we don't do screen time, because she will sneak my son away to her room and put on a show on her iPad for him when there's literally no reason for it. Or give him water out of her cup, or feed him food off her plate with her utensils or fingers when he has his own plate in front of him and can use his own cutlery. Then when I tell her not to share germs because cold, flu, RSV, common sense, she gets huffy with me and goes on a tangent about how we are the ones exposing her to more germs. They might be small boundaries, but I'm just exhausted having to fight them every freaking time and endure her passive-aggressive and overbearing ways. Now, my husband and I had agreed to hold off on them visiting when we have our second baby and play it by ear. My husband has 2 weeks off, so they would come sometime within that time frame, but I wanted some time to adjust first. I made him read the lemon plot essay and he acted like it was an over-exaggeration, but I stood firm and he agreed initially. Well, last night my husband got home from work and was just pissy. He said nothing was wrong, but as soon as my baby went to bed, one of our biggest fights happened. We don't really fight, we discuss, and discussions are almost solely about his parents, but this felt like a fight. Anyway, he came in with an attitude and told me that he thought about it and he wants his parents to be at our place when we get home from the hospital so they can see the toddler meet the baby. He said they can stay in a hotel, but he basically thinks I'm being selfish for not wanting his parents there, and how it isn't fair that my parents will get to meet the baby right away. They'll be looking after the toddler because they live locally. He went on about how he is tired of me always getting upset and not wanting to spend time with his parents, and that he resents me for not letting him see his parents more, which is 100% inaccurate. I complain and I don't like when they make plans to come see us with 24 hours notice, but I let it happen if we don't have other plans. I told him it wouldn't be such an issue and I wouldn't have to complain if he backed me up when it comes to his mom's boundary stomping. He played dumb and like he always does, but in reality he lets me fight all the battles and pretends. Or is just that freaking blind that he doesn't see or hear the things when they happen. For more info, I think one of my last posts was called I got a shiny new spine for Christmas. He even said, I know she doesn't have a single healthy relationship in her life and she's a toxic person, but she's my mom. And it isn't fair for you to keep my parents from big moments that your parents get to be a part of. It got ugly. It was a lot of back and forth and how I don't care about what he wants and vice versa, and he more or less said that I need to compromise on this one. Then he stumped away and we haven't spoken since. My pregnancy insomnia is really bad right now, so I think I managed 3.5 hours of sleep last night in between crying and trying to get my horrible headache to go away. I'm really struggling right now and feel so hurt by all the things he said and his clear disregard for my own happiness. His mom takes over, and in videos of all big moments in our toddler's life, she is the center of attention. I just feel like her being at my house when we bring the baby home will ruin that memory for me, because videos will be of her squealing and getting in my toddler's face. For his birthday, she pulled his chair right next to hers and blew out his candle, and I had to make her move just so I could sit on one side of my kid to help him open presents. Otherwise, I would have had to sit on the floor at 8 months pregnant or on the other side of her. There might be little things, but they piss me off to no end, because to me, she is so purposeful with her behavior, trying to exclude me, the mom, but nobody calls her out on it, and I constantly feel like I'm on eggshells and having to choose when to be the bad guy and when to let things slide. I just don't want that for one of the biggest moments in my life. I don't know though. Am I wrong? Do I need to compromise and give my husband what he wants? I don't want to look back and watch videos and just hear her screeching or talking about herself. I want the moment to be calm and peaceful and beautiful. And if they do come to town, they would probably stay a few days, so would want to visit every day. Usually they stay at our place, but have got a hotel in the past, and we're literally here from breakfast until our toddler's bedtime. I told my husband maybe they could come, but it would be 2 hours maximum, and while he agreed, I told him I expected him to enforce that, and he just got silent and started arguing about how it isn't fair that my parents get to spend more time with our toddler, so I really don't trust him to enforce this kind of thing. Also, side note, I told my husband back in November after another squabble about his parents that we should do couples counseling because we don't ever seem to see eye to eye on the issues, and he shot it down. Now counselors in my area that are accepting new clients have a 6 to 8 week wait, and I need help basically right this second. So don't bother with that suggestion. Now, there is an update. I'll get to the update in a second. To deal with the primary issue here, it is unfair to have different standards for one side of the family than for the other. So I actually do kind of get where the husband is coming from here. And when he says it's not really fair that you're okay with your parents being there, but then you're not okay with my parents being there, I would also be like, yeah, okay, I see where he's coming from. That said, what OP seems to not quite grasp, or what her husband largely doesn't grasp at all in terms of how she talks to him, fundamentally, as the son, considering the mother-in-law here is his mother, he should be the one to enforce boundaries that they agree on as a couple. Now, I'm not saying that the mother can't do that as well, that OP can't do that as well. Obviously, she's trying to do that as well. But if you agree as a couple that you have this boundary, then he should be 100% behind her. If he agrees and he admits himself that his mother is very toxic, and I think if I find it, he says, she doesn't have a single healthy relationship in her life. If that is how he feels about his mother, then he should be 150% on OP's side when it comes to setting boundaries. Now, that said, I think most of the boundaries that she talked about there are quite minor. Like, I don't think they're a big deal. I totally understand why you would be annoyed if you feel like you're being edged out of your toddler's life. And I think that to a large extent, I would expect my husband to step in, especially if she's like 8 months pregnant. I honestly can't imagine this, being 8 months pregnant and having my in-laws sitting there and like being totally happy to sit and play. And then if I just acted as if I wanted to sit next to my kid, I'm 150% sure they would immediately get up and let me sit. So I get why she's annoyed. This is fundamentally a problem between the couple, and she calls it he dropped a bomb, but I think that he called her out on something that's quite fair, and then he's not accepting to a very large degree how his behavior is contributing to the problem instead of helping. Now, what he could say is, I know that my mom can be really annoying to deal with, and yes, she can be pretty toxic, and I'm going to be on your side, and we're going to figure this out, and we're going to handle it together. But then the trade-off, kind of what I expect from you in return, is that my parents get treated the same as your parents as much as possible. And then it's pretty simple, and it's not that complicated. I feel really bad for OP that they kind of had this screaming, raging fight about it. And this idea of her feeling like she's talking on eggshells. She spent ages crying at night. She has a headache. She's pregnant. She's really sad and really emotional. And they squabble all the time. I think all of that is unfortunate and very sad. I think kind of the worst thing is when she says, okay, maybe they could come for 2 hours, and she's kind of trying to compromise with him. But then she says, you're the person that should enforce that. And then he got annoyed by it. I think that there the problem really is to understand what are the things that you actually perceive to be boundaries together. And if he thinks it's unfair for them to stay for 2 hours, then you can't expect him to enforce that. If you actually agree on something together where you go, okay, you know what, this is what I need. What I need is space and peace, and I want this moment to be calm and something that I'm going to look forward to and enjoy. And if we're going to film it, then I want to be able to watch those videos afterwards and feel good about them, which means I don't want your mum to be in the center of every shot. And then he goes, all right, this is how I can help you make that happen. And suddenly the whole argument is very, very different. I think that a big part of these problems is always how you approach these conversations. And if you put one spouse, one partner in this position where they feel like they're hard done by, they feel like their side of the family isn't appreciated, or they feel like they don't get a say in moments that are actually quite important and major for them as well, then obviously it ends up in a much larger conflict. Now, to read the update, she says, thank you all for your insights and opinions. I realized I'm not wrong for wanting the moment to be intimate, but could compromise in some way. I especially appreciated people's experiences and those that said they regretted having people attend the meeting of siblings, as it helped me be more decisive, and realized I would 100% regret having his family there, but would never regret it just being the four of us. My husband and I talked for hours last night, and I feel like we made great progress. We have ultimately decided to compromise by having my parents meet the baby and toddler at a a later time as well, so that the siblings meeting can be an intimate moment as a nuclear family. My husband has no issue with my parents and originally was fine if they were there, but he said that if his parents can't be there, then neither should mine. It's not an argument worth my marriage, quite frankly, so I will have that awkward conversation with them later. I would much rather have it be the nuclear family than a big spectacle with his mother, so it's sort of a compromise. While he isn't admitting it, I think mother-in-law has sufficiently guilted him, as his perspective was all about how his parents don't have the same opportunities to see her as mine, and this is a big opportunity that he could give them. He also didn't see it as being such a big deal for this moment to be shared with a bunch of others. Unfortunately, I think this is what a lifetime of manipulation and favoritism from a parent does to a child, and so his decisions about prioritizing them occur on a somewhat subconscious level. Subconscious level. He knows how toxic she can be, but still is trying to earn her love by giving her these opportunities almost as gifts and lessen the ammunition of being made to feel guilty for them missing out. He would never say it like that. I'm not sure he even realizes it. But when I asked for his perspective and how he wanted the moment to go, it was all about them instead of I. Whereas my wishes were about me and the best interest of my child and myself. In his defense, my first postpartum experience was a dreamy one in which my recovery was fast and mainly pain-free. So I think that's what he envisioned I would be like this time around. So no big deal if people come over for an hour or two. He also has a very stressful job and is stressed about having a newborn again. Truthfully, I think he had his own level of postpartum depression with our first and likely is worried that will happen again. So while his timing sucks and I'm still hurt by it, I can see how his eruption was really just that. Moving forward, I do want to pursue couples counseling as it pertains to his mother. I am worried though that my husband won't be able to handle a lot of the truths he quite frankly ignores or represses when it comes to the hard facts about how his narcissistic mother actually treats him and others. He has spent a lifetime letting things go and pretending they didn't happen or making up excuses, all modeled and encouraged, quite frankly, by my father-in-law. Changing that will be difficult. Now, I appreciate that they managed to come up with a compromise that works for them, and I actually do also appreciate that the compromise is let's exclude both parents and have a moment as a nuclear family instead. I think this is cool. This is how I would want to do it as well. What I kind of really hate a little bit about OP and where I think she's really shooting herself in the foot is this desire to try and change her husband's narrative about his relationship with his mother or with his dad or within his family. And I think that this is one of those moments where, yeah, you have a say in this in as much as his relationship with his parents impacts your family and impacts how you interact with them. And so, of course, if he's unable to enforce boundaries and you have problems with how they treat you or how they talk to you or how they act, then this is something that you need to deal with and you need to agree on that. But anything beyond that, in terms of how he cares about them, whether he puts their needs before his own, I don't think that it is right or healthy for the wife in a married couple to try and convince her husband that his parents are narcissistic, are abusive, are manipulative, and so on. I think if you come at it from this angle, then you take away a lot of agency from that person themselves, and you completely disregard his perspective as the person who's actually experiencing it and going through it. And yes, of course, people who are experiencing manipulation and these things have blinders on, that maybe they have blind spots. There's always value in having an external perspective, but trying to force it on him and then saying, I want us to do counseling in order to change his mind about this, I think that that's not going to work out. I think that's going to go pretty badly. I understand the urge and I understand the need. And of course, there are aspects of this relationship that may be super unhealthy, and there is a certain amount of putting other people's concerns before yours that will be unhealthy for you and especially for your family. But again, your focus from the wife side of the equation, as far as I'm concerned, obviously this is my opinion, your focus from the wife part of the equation is to consider your family and how things influence your family and the things that you want. It should not be to try to change his relationship with his parents. I think that's quite dodgy. And I say this as someone who, like, I have a pretty good relationship with my in-laws, but not a great relationship with my parents. And so my husband does not have a great relationship with my parents either. And maybe it's this aspect of how you switch, of just switching things around. But generally speaking, when you are the person who is the the face of that. Like when you're dealing with parents like that all day, every day, then it's very frustrating to have other people try to diminish your perspective or to try to convince you that you're an abuse victim if you feel like you're not, for example. That's not healthy for your marriage either. That will definitely be taking an argument and making a much bigger deal out of it. Now, what's really interesting about all of these concerns, all of these problems that come up from in-laws and dealing with in-laws is that they, in my opinion, highlight the cracks in your own marriage and in your relationship with each other. And so the question is always, how do you manage these types of conflicts together? And how do you perceive your family as its own separate unit that you need to protect, separate from your extended family, separate from your parents and his parents?